We begin today with remarks from our next speaker. He didn't get his undergraduate degree at Kane. He started at one of those other colleges down in Trenton, but he soon corrected the error, got his master's degree here at Kane, came back to serve as the Board of Trustees, and in punishment for his sins is now our 18th president. We are so fortunate to have him with us today and to hear his remarks. Dr. Lamont Repollet.
I think Craig got it wrong. I've been blessed to be here today. And this is definitely not a punishment for coming here. This is definitely off script, so my team is probably saying that's not in the notes. But sometimes when you're in the spirit, it moves you. This is where my heart is right now. Psalms 30. I will exalt you, Lord, for you lifted me out of the depths and did not let my enemies gloat over me. Lord, my God, I called for you for help. You healed me. Your Lord brought me up from the realm of the dead. You spared me from the going down to the pit. Singing the praises of the Lord, you, his faithful people, praise his holy name. You turned my wailing into dancing. You removed my sackcloth and clothed me with joy, that my heart may sing your praise and not be silent, Lord my God. I will praise you forever. That was something that was just on my mind in regards to just talking to Dr. Weber earlier today, a few minutes ago, regarding her husband, Barry. And it was something I wanted to just express to her from my thoughts and feelings on that. So good afternoon, colleagues, students, and members of the Kane University community. We come together today to remember the immense toll taken by COVID-19 pandemic. The last 18 months have been like no other for us as a global society, a nation, and a university community. Today, we remember those who have lost their lives to COVID-19, our colleagues and classmates, family, friends, and loved ones who were taken by a virus that had no regard for the lives they lived, for the joy that they shared, and the plans they had in store. Here at Kane, we mourn the loss of Dr. J. Barry Mascari, Associate Professor and Chair of the Graduate Counselor Education Program, who died last May after a lengthy battle with COVID-19. Well known across the campus, but as I mentioned to Jane, across the state in every district. Dr. Mascari left a legacy as a national leader within the counseling field, as well as a reputation for kindness and compassion that impacted every student that he's ever taught. In true Cougar fashion, students and others surrounded Barry and his family with prayer and good wishes during his illness. They even held a car parade last year as a show of support. We send our continued condolences and support to his wife, Dr. Jane Weber, who is an assistant professor and doctoral program coordinator in Kane's counseling department. I know that Dr. Mascari is just one example of the lives taken by this capricious and callous virus. Join me in a moment of silence for all of us, the lost loved ones who have passed away over the past 18 months. As we pause to reflect on this pandemic's toll on our campus community, we must also rededicate ourselves to doing everything we can to stop the spread of this virus. We do it in the names and to honor those lives that have been lost. So today is also a call for action for all of us to continue to encourage strong public health measures that protect our health and prevent needless loss of life. A call to action to do all we can right now to stop the spread in this insidious virus. We must all reach inside ourselves and do what is best for all of us. I thank every single member of the campus community for getting vaccinated, for wearing masks, maintaining social distance, washing our hands, taking all the steps that we all know will work to combat the menace of COVID-19. We know that if COVID-19 affects all of us, it will affect every one of us in a way that we can ever imagine, personally and professionally. Also want to thank the first responders and frontline workers who have shown unyielding bravery, dedication, and compassion in the face of this deadly virus. In hard times, caring communities such as Kane come together, and this pandemic is no different. Our students, faculty, and staff have volunteered at the testing and vaccination sites on campus and at the county's emergency food distribution events. But Cougars climb even higher. At Kane, we recognize not only the personal impact of the pandemic on each and every one of us, but also its historic significance. Assistant Professor Brian Oakes, who teaches media and journalism, launched the COVID-19 Oral History Project to capture our personal memories and reflections during this unprecedented time in our lives. I encourage you to reach out to Professor Oakes to share your story and add your narrative. Today, let us all remind ourselves to practice grace and patience with one another during these difficult times in all ways. If we keep our shared humanity first in mind, our conversations about COVID-19 and other divisive topics, no matter how controversial, will be lively, but they will also be civil. As I said earlier, I wish loss didn't bring us together today. We're united in one shared grief, but we're also united by love, kindness, and a shared responsibility to see each and every one of us through this challenging time. And that is what I carry for all of us today as we build a brighter future here at Kane University. As I always end, thank you and God bless.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jason Plates, and I currently serve as the Executive President for Student Organization. And before we begin, I just want to thank every single one of you for being here, students, faculty, staff, and administrators. As we embark on this new chapter of our university's story, we would be remiss to not reflect on the lives that we lost during the worst effects of COVID-19. In some ways, we have all been touched by this global tragedy, whether it be a close friend, family member, a friend of a friend, or a distant loved one. We were all forever changed by the shared struggle that we survived. As students, we were challenged. We were challenged to adapt, discover, and reimagine our college years in ways others could have never fathomed. And with our everyday lives shutting down, we were able and we had the opportunity to wake up and bring light to many pressing issues that we had in this country and that we didn't have the time to see clearly before. From police brutality to Capitol insurrections, we have witnessed, organized, and we have also fought back against intolerance. And as the next generation of leaders, we owe it to ourselves and our futures to take the lessons learned from this past year and make new paths towards a future worth fighting for. And as I always say, is that we have a purpose. So if I woke up today and you're here today, it's because we still have that purpose to fulfill. So with this new perspective, we come to campus fully prepared with better ideas. We have better lessons learned from last year and take that and make and create new paths for a future worth fighting for. I am hopeful that this will be the most memorable year yet here at Kane University. And as student organization president, I look to my fellow students, student leaders, faculty, and administrators to help forge this new path. And now I have the utmost privilege to introduce one of our most courageous and dedicated students, Selena Edwards, who fought on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic at the testing center here on campus. So, Selena, if you can come up and if we can all give a round of applause, not just to Selena, but to all the healthcare workers, all the workers who worked during the pandemic. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to first take the time to offer my condolences to everyone that experienced a loved one passing during the COVID-19. While these people were taken from us too soon, they'll continue to live in our hearts forever. As we face this new school year, let us be mindful to continually keep each other safe and encourage one another as we overcome the trials we are sure to face. I, like many of you, have faced this pandemic with a heart full of uncertainty and no clue of when the end would come into view. This pandemic has taught us to appreciate life because, as we have seen, not every day is guaranteed. Together, we struggled with online learning. We were challenged with balancing our academic and personal lives. We dealt with intrusive parents, needy pets, and siblings who never seemed to understand the concepts of privacy and being in class. On top of maintaining friendships and frontline working, we also dealt with keeping our families and ourselves safe and healthy. For many of us, these past 2 years have been full of countless moments. Many of us face loss, financial burdens, sacrifices, and sleepless nights. For some of us, these past 2 years have been full of redemption, self-discovery, and achievements. These moments have shaped us all individually into stronger, wiser, and more resilient people. We picked up new hobbies and talent, which helped us manage stress and give us more experience. Regardless of our individual path, we made it here to this point. And even if we still don't know what tomorrow brings, we should be proud of our progress, taking every day one step at a time. Our student body finds our own way to push through life's difficult obstacles, carving individual destinies in the process. As Cougars, we will always climb back, and we will do it together. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Dr. Terenzi from the Kane University Music Department, and I've been really enjoyed these inspired speakers today. And at this point, the organizers of this event asked for some music, and there is no music that is more inspired and spiritual and comforting than that of J.S. Bach. So I think you will enjoy it so much, especially the voices of our current students and graduates, as you will see in the program. One extra part of this music will be performed by an adjunct professor of oboe, Professor Lynn Cohen, who happened to be here today teaching oboe, and I said, gosh, this Bach piece actually has an oboe part. We didn't plan for it because we were going to be outside, but now that we're inside, she's able to play with us. So please join me in welcoming Professor Lynn Cohen and the students and alums.
My name is Chris Bolito. I teach in the history department. And for many years, my partner was Barry Mascari. Barry and I worked on new faculty orientation for about 6 or 8 years, and two different people you could not imagine. We disagreed about lots of things, including programming. He loved these icebreakers. I hate icebreakers. And yet somehow we worked together because Barry was the person who always put you first. If you met him, you couldn't get in, "How's it going, Barry?" because he beat you to it. "How are you? How is your family?" He'd have to run off somewhere else because not only did he have expansive responsibilities on this campus, but also across the state and beyond. And yet, with all of that he had to do, he always made you feel that you were the most important person that he could talk to in that moment. And of course, Barry is not the only person that we've lost. We've lost members of professional staff and faculty and students and their families. And so, as I say a few more things, I'd like you to call to mind those people that you've lost. And I know from my own experience of grief that it's not so much the absence of their presence, but it's the very presence of their absence. You can feel that they're not there. And I was trying to figure out a way to say this, and because I'm an historian, I'd rather let someone else from history say it. So if you would come back with me to North Africa, Algeria today, in the year 376, there's a young man there named Augustine. He's 22 years old, and he's just lost his best friend. This friend was so close to him that he said he was half my soul. And he finds, Augustine, that he can't even go for walks anymore because, let's let him tell you. My eyes, Augustine says, my eyes looked for him everywhere, this friend who died. But he wasn't there to be seen, and I hated everywhere because he was not there. Nor could those places say, "Hey, he's coming, he's on his way," because he wasn't. And what's very curious is that in his very long memoir, Augustine doesn't name this friend who died. I think he couldn't name this friend who died. But we all know the names of those people who died. And while we are here to mourn death, we are also here to celebrate life. And so I'd like to honor Barry by doing audience participation, which I also hate. Would you please, in silence, call to mind the names of those people that you have lost? And then I'm going to count to 3. And on 3, would you please join me in calling their names out and filling this atrium with the memory of their names? 1, 2, 3. We miss them. We will remember them. We will carry them always. And Jane Weber, Barry's wife, will speak next. But I want to say something to Jane publicly that some of you may not know, that while Barry was ill, Jane's phone rang because she's a specialist in grief and therapy and counseling. And even though she was struggling, she answered CNN's call and gave interviews because she could help, because she knew that's what Barry would have done. And so her legacy is Barry's. Jane?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. And that's what Barry would have done. I want to thank everyone, and this is hard for me to say, for your support, your kind words, your love. And this is the funeral Barry didn't have. He loves music, he's a musician, he was an artist, and he would be sitting in the front row tapping his feet and his fingers as if he were drumming right now. So I thank you. I have a few memories for those of you who might not have understood Barry's way of life, but he was so charismatic, he was such one-of-a-kind visionary. He was way ahead of his time, and he would do everything possible for 3 small words: faith, hope, and love. Now, I did find out from his dad that he failed out of Sunday school when he was 5 years old for not paying attention, but he did learn those 3 virtues and practice them. And he believed in every one of us. He never gave up on anyone. And you're right. He lived in the present moment with you as if you were the only person in the world. And he remembered every word you said and everything that happened in your life. And he'd remind you next time he saw you, whether it was a day or a year or 10 years. He had boundless energy for everyone's success. He didn't selectively have his favorites. Everyone was equally important and perfect to him. And he would make sure every student graduated, no matter what obstacles were in the way, what rules needed to be turned around, and what people needed to be found to pay for lunch or a Christmas tree or a car. We did it all out of our living room. He had this unique ability to find the best in you at the moment. And some of our applicants were not exactly the best academic students, but they had the heart to be the best counselor in the world, whether it was for schools or mental health or addictions. And he would find that applicant and nurture them. Although the grades weren't so great the first semester, when they graduated, they were the best counselors we ever saw. And Barry found a way of finding that in their hearts to stay with that job. Those late bloomers were his special favorites, whether they were 30 years old or 50 or 74. He talked about his own life as a late bloomer, the son of a high school dropout and a tech graduate who lived in the streets, basically, and found his niche in art, music, drum corps, and anything that helped everyone. He just kept doing it. But when we had a new group of applicants or students, the first thing he would show them was a slide of his high school freshman report card. And I'm not sure whether it was a full house with 3 Ds and 2 Fs or 3 Fs and 2 Ds, but everybody knew that he made it through and he was going to make sure you made it through as well. And it meant even having office hours at 11 o'clock at night after class. He rose to the leadership and nearly the presidency of every association and organization nationally and internationally. And he did it with humility. He would rather not be known as the president or the chief executive officer, but just as J. Barry Mascari. He would do it anyway, even if he didn't have the name. Graduates take pride in being part of Barry's fan club. They call themselves Barry's Army. They're going to charge, their charge is to save one person at a time for their entire life by giving that present focus to everyone. Our students under Barry's tutelage are the best counselors in the world. One day, we were waiting for a large meeting of parents and graduates, and our entire graduate lounge was full of 200 chairs, and it was about an hour before. And Barry was standing in front of the microphone, and he's talking and tapping and all that. And George Askins, some of you know our grad assistant for a while, called down from the balcony, "Dr. Mascari, what are you saying?" He said, "I'm giving a lecture on existential angst." And that's what he did, and he smiled, and George learned that very important lesson about depth. There's a sparkle in Barry's eyes that just keeps you alive and going. He went through lots of hardship, but we never knew about it because he was only focused on you, and we pass on that legacy of love and hope to every one of our students. It kept us alive and hoping. And we're going to know that all we have is his memories, but we also have his mystical, spiritual, funny, humorous presence that will always be with us, and it gives me a smile. Barry had a way of smoothing out our rough edges when we're a little cranky or we have dissension, and turn them into empathy and love in a matter of moments. And I want to keep that memory for us so that we pass it on to other people. He affectionately called our Kane and our CED family. You are family, you are his family, we're family. And we never want to lose the spirit that Barry has placed in Kane, because it was his second family. And he truly believed that he was going to live here and pass on someday. They'll have to carry him out, he said, from his desk. And so we're keeping him here because that kind of one-of-a-kind presence is invaluable. We also have a little group that we call the FOB, and that's Friends of Barry, taking it from addictions. But Friends of Barry are everywhere. They're in lounges, they're at meetings, they're in the cafeteria, they're on the street. Oh, you knew Dr. Mascari? Oh, Dr. Barry. I now tell you that what I feel is to remember all those present moments to stay with us. And when we ever worry about risking to do the right thing for someone, whatever it takes, remember he is always right side us or behind us, walking that path together with us. And I thank you all for having this memory and this memorial for him. And I want to extend my gratitude on behalf of the kids, Matt and Janine, Chris and Julia, and Barry's mom, Grandma Doris, who you all know will live forever, but she did pass in February of COVID. And all she did was wish Barry could be back at Kane, where he felt his true love. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say how wonderful it was to hear Dr. Weber give those recollections of Dr. Mascari. I never got a chance to meet him, but I have met many of his students, and many of the things that you said reflect the energy that comes with those students and what they took from him and took from you in the work that you both did. My name is Dr. Vidal Annan, and I'm the director of the Office of Counseling, Accessibility, Alcohol, and Other Drug Services in the Kane Wellness Center here on campus. Our office is dedicated to providing mental health and wellness support to our students here at Kane. Much of our work in the last year and a half, not surprisingly, has been focused on helping students grieve the loss of loved ones due to COVID. We have helped them put words to and make sense of losses that are often too much to bear. It has been hard work, but we are honored to be that source of support for them. As I was thinking about what to share here today, I found it helpful to reflect on some of the ways that we, as counselors, have tried to be there for those students that we have worked with directly. If it's okay with everyone, I would like to share a few ways that we, as counselors, have tried to help our students make sense of the deaths that they have experienced. I remember one student who was so racked with the pain of her loss. The intensity of the loss was at times indescribable for her. And my work at the time was to help her to understand that the pain of grief was not a meaningless suffering that had to be gotten rid of, but rather a reminder of the love she had for her relative who had died. After all, what would it mean about her relationship to that loved one if she felt no sadness after the death of that person. I remember as the calming awareness came to her that the reason she hurt so deeply was because she loved so deeply. The second understanding that I wanted to share today is about the role of ritual in the process of grief. All cultures, anywhere you go around the world, have bereavement rituals for a reason. Going through an active physical process of remembrance helps us approach the loss in an empowered way. It reminds us that despite the sadness, we still have choice and strength, and that even though our loved one is gone, we can still carry on with their memories close to our hearts. Ritual is why we are here today, right now. It reminds us about those who are gone, but also that together we can move forward. We have worked hard to help many students who come to the counseling center find meaningful rituals as they go through their grieving process. I hope you find these words as helpful as our students did, and I encourage you to share our information with other students who may be struggling with the process of grief. We are definitely here to help. Grieving is painful, but perhaps with the support of a compassionate counselor, that student can find some peace and some strength as we are all seeking to do. Thank you.
Let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father, brother all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
I have the matching boot to Jane, which is why I'm going to sit, if it's okay with you all, for my remarks. I feel very emotional right now, just to be reunited with our Kane family today. It's been a year and a half since I've seen most of your faces, and it's so good to see you. So I was asked to talk a little bit about our Be the Change community service and activism group and some of what we've been up to and how we can incorporate some of this moving forward. Renewed bonds, the future, celebrating our lives, celebrating what we've lost. So Be the Change grew out of our students. We have the best students. They care. They care so deeply about things happening in our world. Be the Change grew out of the BP oil spill. So many of you, by the way, in this room have been involved in our projects over the years. I saw Dr. Tony back there. We've got Dr. Roth. So many of you have helped with projects over the years. When the BP oil spill happened, we drove to Mississippi. We helped the fishermen. We're really very passionate about homelessness and hunger and mental health. We went to Standing Rock. We drove from Standing Rock in North Dakota all the way to the Rosebud Nation in South Dakota, and we collected water samples that are in our STEM freezer at minus 30 degrees so that there would be a baseline health of the Missouri River for the Native Americans who cared so deeply about not having their river polluted by the Dakota Access Pipeline. We have Linda, who is one of our volunteers. She's sitting here in the front. She turned us into a certified emergency response team, and because of that, we got to go to Houston and help when there was Hurricane Harvey. And as you can imagine, we've helped again and again for a lot of the natural disasters. So I just want to say something about the research on resilience. The seminal work of Folkman and Lazarus tell us that if you can find meaning and purpose in things that happen that are even really bad, losing our friends, losing our family, losing our students, if we can find some way to create meaning and purpose, we will do a lot better, not only as individuals, but collectively as a group. So please just think for a moment about what meaning and purpose means to you. How do we tap into that well of meaning and purpose in such difficult times? When COVID hit, Be the Change made bags. We had masks, gloves, vitamin C, instructions on what to do with the hand sanitizer that we put in the bags, and we gave them out to about 200 people. Many of you got those bags. Raise your hand if you got a Be the Change bag, right? We moved our food pantry from campus to my garage, and we started feeding 10 families a week. But that quickly grew because the Elizabeth school system kept telling us about families who were sick in Elizabeth. The school nurse director kept telling me, this family's sick, that's family's sick. We didn't want anybody to go to the grocery store. We delivered food to doorsteps. My neighbor, the emergency room physician who was on front line day after day, saw so much death. We made sure she had food at her doorstep too. We delivered to elders, families with newborns, nurses who were sick. Karen Uar, who lost her daughter in a horrific domestic violence murder 2 months ago. We make sure she gets food to her doorstep too. Again, meaning and purpose, meaning and purpose. Be the Change was asked to partner on a Center for Disease Control grant with the Department of Health to bring vaccines and testing to the community. We decided to accept that challenge, but But we went behind dumpsters, in parking lots, in churches, and in places where people maybe didn't have paperwork or telephones or computers to make appointments for their vaccines. Meaning and purpose. I found inspiration, meaning and purpose in my student, Daniela Rodriguez, who on a Saturday lost her favorite person in the world, her grandpa, in the ICU at Overlook Hospital. 2 weeks later, she lost her mother to COVID, just like her grandpa, in the ICU at Overlook Hospital, just beds away, Jane, from where Barry was, our beloved Barry. Daniela, I told her, look, she was taking death in perspective, and I said, you're living death in perspective. And I said, we can call it the end of class for you. And she said, no, Dr. Bo, I'm coming to class. She came to every class. She graduated that May, summa cum laude, and she did it for her mother, who was a Kane graduate. Meaning and purpose, meaning and purpose. And I have learned over the years of teaching about death, I've learned lots of things. I've learned that our students, our young students, even our older students, they're carrying a lot of grief. And they carry it like bricks in a backpack because oftentimes there's nowhere to talk about it. There's nowhere to lay it down. And so I've learned also that service work is grief work. Meaning and purpose is so important when you're dealing with sadness and grief. So find your purpose, find your meaning in these bad things that have happened. We need to keep moving forward. We need each other more than ever before. We have to make it count, Cougar family. We have to make this count. So I want to tell you about the next thing we're planning to do. I know it's raining. Our Be the Change group is willing to go on out in the rain. We have our shovel with us. There's a Be the Change memory garden if you just follow this path, if you make the right out of this building and follow the path. And Dr. Balakian brought a tree for us to plant there. Dr. Shebitz picked flowers this morning. They're on the back table. And we'd like to walk in silence to our garden together as a group, plant the tree, put the flowers in our garden. There's a labyrinth that we created. Be the Change built this garden, and one of my students built the gazebo. There's a Buddhist labyrinth out there. The Buddhists say that if you walk in concentric circles with the idea that you're going to lay a burden down when you get to the middle, that you'll be ready to lay it down. So there are plenty of rocks there too. We're going to bring the flowers and lay them down, but if you feel like you have a burden, you have a piece of grief, a piece of your heart has been broken, let's also lay that down out in the garden. Thank you.